So we got a question from one of our athletes, and I kind of want to take some time to address it in a couple of ways. But first of all, the question is, why is the rest interval for sprints so long? So first of all, understand that what we're trying to do whenever we have our athletes sprint is to increase their maximal speed, all right, the power that they can put into the ground. And that means that they need to be fresh, first of all, whenever they're going to go through this exercise, this modality of running. So if I had a line, and this was the amount of time here, and then up here I had output, okay? And then how is my output going to change over time? Now, if I were to give you, I'm going to give you two scenarios. One, I'm going to give you a scenario where you're going to do a sprint every minute, okay? So if I tell you, for the first minute you're going to do a sprint, second minute you're going to do a sprint, third minute you're going to do a sprint, and so on down the line for however many sets we're going to do. Let's say 9 in this case. Whenever you start, your first sprint output is going to be really high. And then you're going to rest for a period of time, the rest of the minute, okay? Then you're going to have to sprint again, but you're not going to be fully recovered, and so your output's going to drop a little bit. It may not drop that much, but it's going to drop. And then you're going to get a little bit of rest, and you're going to have to sprint again, and it's going to drop. And so on and so forth, until pretty soon, like you're really just kind of going through the motions. You're barely able to output really anything like what you were putting out here, right? So the question is the purpose of this exercise achieving the desire for the sprint? Or has the nature of the output changed so much that we're no longer getting the output or the adaptation that we want to get? The simple answer is yeah, absolutely, it's going to change. Now, I mean, at this end, you're using entirely different energy systems. You've smoked your muscles just because of the volume of work in the amount of time that you've given it. Now, the other way to look at it is, what if I were to give you, let's say, 3 or 4 minutes rest between each one? Now, for that first one, you're going to have this really high output, and you're going to rest, and when you rest, you're going to rest completely. That rest line is like going to come all the way down here. And then for the second sprint, you're going to be able to repeat that effort. And so now your maximal output for these two efforts is equal, as opposed to on this continually degrading line here. And then if I were to repeat that again, then we get another huge output. And so the purpose of the sprint, to increase the maximal output, is being fulfilled with this longer rest interval, as opposed to using a shorter interval, which allows us to do more distance, more volume, but it allows much less of a maximal output, which is the goal of this. Now, really what I'm describing is the difference between maximal output training or sprint training and work capacity training. This is something that we would do in a work capacity. And this is something that we're going to do if we're trying to develop sprint or top speed. Now, whenever we look at the energy systems that we're training, whenever we're doing these two different modalities, now we can understand why it is so important to rest as well. The energy system that I'm going to be using for most of my sprints, or for most of the time in a sprint, now typically we define a sprint as 20 seconds or less, is going to be your phosphocreatine system. All right, and that system doesn't require any oxygen. It only lasts about 8 seconds, so the longer you go, if you're going to do like a 100-meter sprint, it's having less and less of an impact on that run, but it's still going to have an impact on your max output for that effort. But the longer we go, the less and less of an impact it's going to have. And that phosphocreatine system takes a long time to recover. All right, it takes your body a long time to metabolize the ingredients that it needs to put that back into your muscles and then fuel the next bout. And so that is why our efforts are so long. Whenever we start to clump our efforts together, closer and closer, we're going to start to use a different energy system, our glycolytic energy system. And now we're going to be limited by different factors than just how long it takes for the phosphocreatine system to recover. So even though a structure of a work capacity, let's say 10 rounds of 100-meter sprints with a 1-minute rest, even though that can look like a sprint effort, that's actually a work capacity effort because of the energy system that you're going to be developing through doing so. And then our longer rests, shorter bouts are going to be more sprint oriented, or they're going to be sprint maximal output efforts because they are developing our ability to put out a maximal effort given that energy system over the course of that volume or the course of that distance. Oh yeah.